My English Learning Story. Part 1, Preparation in Turkey. Hello, my name is Alper. I am from Turkey. I am 20 years old. This is my English learning story. I always wanted to learn English. When I was a child, I listened to English songs, but I did not understand the words. At high school, I studied English a little, but it was not enough. I wanted more. I wanted to speak, to understand, and to live in another country. One day, I decided, I will go to New York to study English. I told my family about my dream. My mother said, Alper, it will be difficult. But if you work hard, you can do it. My father said, son, you must practice every day. English is not only grammar. It is speaking, listening, and living the language. I agreed. From that day, I started preparing in Turkey. Every morning, I read a short English story. At first, it was very difficult. I understood only some words. But I did not stop. In the evenings, I listened to English podcasts for learners. Sometimes I understood, sometimes I did not. Still, I listened. I also wrote new words in a notebook. For example, airport, ticket, student, study, friend. I knew that reading and listening were very important. When I read, I learned new words. When I listened, I learned pronunciation. Saying goodbye. After some months, I applied to a language school in New York. One day, I received an email, Dear Alper, congratulations. You are accepted to our English language school in New York. I was so happy. I jumped and shouted, yes. My dream is starting. I bought my ticket. I prepared my suitcase. I put in my clothes, my books, my Turkish tea, and some photos of my family. The night before my flight, my friends came to visit me. They said, Alper, we will miss you. Don't forget us. I said, of course I will not forget you. And I will come back speaking English. My mother cried a little. She said, be strong, my son. Call us every week. I promised her. On the way to the airport. The next morning, my father drove me to the airport. The road was long, and I felt nervous. In the car, I thought, can I really do this? What if I don't understand anyone? What if my English is too bad? Then I remembered my teacher's words. Language is practice. You must try, again and again. At the airport, I hugged my parents. I said goodbye in Turkish. Hoşça kalın, sizi seviyorum. They said, good luck, Alper. I walked into the airport, with my passport in my hand. That was the beginning of my adventure. In Turkey, I learned one big lesson. If you want to learn a language, you must read, listen, and practice every day. This lesson stayed with me in New York too. Part 2, Journey to New York. The day of my flight finally came. I stood in the airport in Istanbul. The airport was very big. There were many people, many languages, many airplanes. I felt excited, but also a little afraid. At the airport, I looked at the screen. My flight was Istanbul, New York, 9:45. I went to the check-in desk. The woman at the desk smiled and said, passport, please. I gave her my passport and ticket. She asked, do you have any bags? I said slowly, yes, one bag. She gave me my boarding pass. I was happy. I spoke English, and she understood me. On the plane. When I entered the airplane, I found my seat. It was near the window. Next to me sat a young man. He smiled and said, hello. My name is Diego. I am from Brazil. I answered, hello. I am Alper. I am from Turkey. Diego was also going to New York to study English. We talked in simple English. Sometimes we used gestures, sometimes we laughed. It was not perfect English, but it was communication. On the plane, the flight attendants spoke in English. They asked, chicken or pasta? I answered, chicken, please. It was a small sentence, but I felt proud. First sight of New York. After many hours, the plane finally arrived. I looked out of the window. I saw tall buildings, lights, and the Statue of Liberty. I thought, wow, this is New York. My new life is starting. At the airport, I passed passport control. The officer asked, "Why are you in the United States?" I said, "I am a student. I will study English." He stamped my passport and said, "Welcome." My heart beat fast. I was really here. First challenges. At the baggage claim, I could not find my suitcase at first. I walked around and looked at the big carousel. Many bags, many people. I felt confused. Then I saw my red bag. Yes, that's mine. Outside, everything was new. The signs were in English. People spoke quickly. I did not understand everything, but I listened carefully. I took a yellow taxi. The driver asked, "Where to?" I showed him the address of my school. He nodded and started driving. In that moment, I learned another lesson. English is not always perfect. Sometimes it is only simple words, a smile, and courage. On the plane, with Diego. At the airport, with the officer. In the taxi, with the driver. All of them were small steps, but each step was practice. Part 3: First days in New York. When I arrived in New York, everything was new for me. The buildings were tall, the streets were busy, and the people spoke so fast. I felt a little lost, but also very excited. At the school office. The next morning, I went to my English language school. The building was in Manhattan. Many students from different countries were waiting there. At the reception desk, a woman said, "Good morning. Can I help you?" I answered slowly, "Yes, my name is Alper. I am a new student." She gave me some papers. She said, "Please fill out this form. Write your name, country, and phone number." I took the form and wrote, "Name, Alper. Country, Turkey. Phone, 212. After that, she gave me my student card. She smiled and said, "Welcome to our school, Alper." I felt proud again. Looking for a room. After the school registration, I needed a place to live. I looked at many ads. Some were too expensive, some were too far. One day, I saw an ad, room for rent. 2 students. Near subway. Call Carlos. I called the number. A young man answered. "Hello, my name is Carlos. I am from Mexico. Are you looking for a room?" I said, "Yes, I am Alper. I need a room." Carlos invited me to see the apartment. Meeting Carlos. The next day, I visited the apartment. Carlos opened the door. He was friendly and smiled a lot. He said, "Come in, my friend. This is our home." The apartment was small but nice. There was a living room, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. Carlos said, "We can share the rent. You have your own room. What do you think?" I answered, "Yes, it is perfect for me." That day, I moved in with Carlos. Daily life with a roommate. Living with Carlos was a good chance to practice English. He did not speak Turkish, and I did not speak Spanish. So we had to speak English together. For example, in the kitchen, Carlos, "Alper, do you want tea or coffee?" Me, "Tea, please." Turkish tea. Carlos, "Nice." In Mexico we drink a lot of coffee. We laughed and shared stories about Turkey and Mexico. In my first days in New York, I learned something important. Friends help us learn faster. Living with a roommate is not only about sharing a house. It is also about sharing culture and practicing language every day. I was ready for my next step, my first day in class. Part 4 at the English Language School. The next Monday was my first day at school in New York. I woke up early, ate breakfast with Carlos, and took the subway. The train was full of people. Some read books, some listened to music. I listened carefully to the announcements. Next stop, Times Square, 42nd Street. It was difficult, but little by little I understood. Entering the classroom. When I arrived at school, many students were waiting. Everyone looked different. They were from many countries. I felt nervous. A woman entered the room. She smiled and said, "Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Smith. I am your English teacher." We all said, "Good morning." She continued, "Today we will learn about each other. Let's make friends." Meeting classmates. Ms. Smith asked us to introduce ourselves. First was a girl with long dark hair. She said, "Hello, my name is Maria. I am from Spain. I like dancing." Then a tall boy stood up. "Hi, I am Ahmed. I come from Egypt. I love football." Next, a quiet girl smiled. "Hello, my name is Yuki. I am from Japan. I like reading books." Then a blonde girl said, "Hi, I'm Anna. I am from Germany. I like photography." Finally, it was my turn. I stood up and said slowly, "Hello, my name is Alper. I am from Turkey. I like Turkish tea, music, and football." Everyone smiled and clapped. I felt happy. Classroom activities. Ms. Smith gave us a game. She said, "Find someone who likes the same thing as you." I walked to Ahmed. "Do you like football?" I asked. He answered, "Yes, I love football." We both laughed. Maria said to Anna, "Do you like dancing?" Anna said, "Not dancing, but I like music." It was fun. We spoke simple English, but it was real communication. Teacher's advice. At the end of class, Ms. Smith said, "Students, listen carefully. To learn English, you must read, you must listen, and you must practice speaking. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning." I wrote her words in my notebook. They were very important for me. That day, I learned that English is not only a language. It is also a bridge between people. My classmates came from Spain, Egypt, Japan, Germany, and many other countries. We were all different, but we shared the same dream, to learn English. I went home and told Carlos. Today I met many friends. We are all students of English. It was a good day. He said, "Great, Alper. Now you are not only a student. You are part of an international family." Part 5: Daily Life and Challenges. After the first week at school, I began my daily life in New York. Everything was new and exciting, but also sometimes difficult. Going to the market. One day, I needed to buy food. I went to a small market near my apartment. The shelves were full of food I did not know. I looked at the vegetables. I wanted tomatoes. I asked the cashier, "Excuse me, tomatoes?" She smiled and said, "Yes, over there." I found the tomatoes, and then I looked for bread, cheese, and milk. At the counter, I tried to pay. The cashier asked, "Do you want a bag?" I said, "Yes, please." It was simple, but I felt proud. I spoke English and everyone understood me. Taking the subway. The next challenge was the subway. I needed to go to school every day. The subway map was very big and confusing. I bought a MetroCard. The woman at the ticket machine said, "Swipe here." I swiped the card, entered the train, and found the seat. People were speaking quickly, but I listened carefully. Sometimes I asked, "Excuse me, is this train to Times Square?" People were friendly and helped me. Cultural differences. In New York, I saw many differences from Turkey. People walk very fast in the streets. In restaurants, you tip 15 to 20% of the bill. People speak to strangers in the park and on the bus. At first, it was strange. I did not understand why people were so friendly. But slowly, I adapted. Challenges at school. At school, some exercises were difficult. Listening to native speakers was not easy. Sometimes I could not understand. One day, Ms. Smith said, "Don't worry, Alper. Listen slowly, repeat, and practice every day. You will improve." I repeated the sentences at home. I listened to podcasts, read short stories, and practiced speaking with Carlos and my classmates. I learned an important lesson. Language is everywhere. You do not only learn in the classroom. You learn when you shop, when you travel, and when you meet people. Every day, I tried to speak a little more English. Sometimes I made mistakes, but I learned. Every mistake was a step forward. Part 6: Learning English with Friends. After a few weeks, I started to feel more comfortable in New York. School was interesting, and I was making friends from different countries. Practicing with classmates. In class, Ms. Smith often said, "Students, practice English with your friends. Speak about your day, your hobbies, your country." I joined a small group with Ahmed from Egypt and Maria from Spain. One day, we talked about food. I said, "In Turkey, we eat a lot of rice and bread." Ahmed said, "In Egypt, we eat a lot of bread and beans." Maria said, "In Spain, we eat rice too, but we love paella." We laughed and learned new words. I realized, talking with friends is the best practice. Speaking with Carlos. At home, I practiced English with Carlos every day. Carlos asked, "Alper, what did you learn at school today?" I answered, "I learned new words. Listen, read, speak, write." And we practiced speaking with friends. Sometimes we made small mistakes. Carlos said, "Don't worry, mistakes help us learn." Reading and listening. Ms. Smith also encouraged us to read and listen every day. We read short stories in class. I read a story about a boy in New York. I learned new words and phrases. We listened to audio stories. At first, it was hard to understand. But after listening many times, I could understand more. One day, I read a story and told it to Carlos in English. He understood. I felt proud. Fun activities. Sometimes we played games in English. For example, guess the word. Describe an object. Make a short story together. These games helped me speak without fear. I laughed, made mistakes, and learned at the same time. I learned an important lesson. Learning English is not only about grammar. It is about speaking, listening, reading, and practicing every day. With friends, life became fun. We helped each other, shared our cultures, and practiced English. Every day, I became a little better. My confidence grew. Part 7: Special Moments. One day, Ms. Smith said to the class, "Students, we will start a reading club. You can read a short story and tell it to the class." I was excited and nervous. I liked reading, but speaking in front of the class was difficult. Reading club. First, Maria read her story. She read slowly and clearly. After she finished, she asked, "Do you understand?" We all nodded. Then Ahmed read his story. He spoke with confidence. Everyone clapped. Finally, it was my turn. I took a short story about a boy in New York. I read slowly. The boy walked in Central Park. He saw birds and children. He smiled. After reading, I told the story in my own words. I said, "The boy is happy. He likes the park." My classmates smiled. Ms. Smith said, "Very good, Alper. You spoke clearly and understood the story." Learning from stories. I learned many new words from the stories. Words like smile, walk, happy, park, children. Ms. Smith said, "Students, reading and listening are very important. You can learn new words and sentences. And when you speak about stories, you practice English." I realized she was right. Reading and listening were not only for school. They were for real life too. Practicing with friends. After reading club, I talked with Carlos and my classmates about the stories. Carlos said, "Alper, tell me your story again." I told him. The boy walked in the park. He saw children and birds. He was happy. Carlos smiled. "Great. You speak English very well. I understood that practice is very important. Every day, I tried to read, listen, and speak English. That day, I learned an important lesson. English is learned with stories, listening, reading, and practice. You must try every day. Mistakes are normal. Don't be afraid. I felt proud of myself. I was not perfect, but I was learning. And that is the most important thing. Part 8, Alper's reflection. After several months in New York, I felt different. I was not the same person who first arrived from Turkey. I learned many things, not only English. Improving every day. Every day, I practiced English. I read short stories, listened to audio, spoke with classmates, and talked with Carlos. I remember the first week. I could say only a few words. Now, I could speak about my day, my hobbies, and my country. I also made mistakes, but I was not afraid anymore. Mistakes helped me learn faster. Friends and culture. I met friends from Spain, Egypt, Japan, Germany, Mexico, and more. We shared our cultures and learned from each other. Talking with friends was fun. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we helped each other with words. I learned that learning a language is not only studying in the classroom. It is living, talking, and sharing every day. Challenges and success. Life in New York was not always easy. Sometimes I was tired, sometimes I was confused. I remember taking the subway the first time. I did not know where to go. I remember going to the market and not understanding the cashier. But slowly, step by step, I learned. Every challenge became a lesson. Now, I can give advice to other students. Practice every day. Read, listen, speak, and write. Do not be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are normal. Make friends. Talking with friends is the best practice. Enjoy the journey. Learning English is not only studying, it is also fun and adventure. Feeling proud. Today, I can speak English better. I can understand my teachers, classmates, and even strangers in New York. I feel proud of myself. I am not perfect, but I am improving every day. I know that learning English is a long journey, but it is possible. If you try, practice, and never give up, you can do it. I am happy I made this journey. My English learning story is just beginning, and the adventure continues.